Hey guys, what's up? It's One World HT, and this discussion is going to be about Luffy versus Doflamingo. So I've been seeing a lot of comments lately saying stuff like, Doflamingo is stronger, and I don't really see that many people defending Luffy anymore. They seem to want to like believe that the antagonist is better than the main character now. And I'm not going to say I have an opinion just yet. I do sort of side with one side of the table, but I don't want to go into that yet. I just want everyone to keep an open mind throughout this video, and I'm going to try to keep an open mind too. So this is going to be mainly for discussion, obviously, because it's a discussion. So if you disagree with it, that's fine. You just post it in the comment section. My opinions, or even if I have facts to back it up, nothing's final. So don't take my word for it if you don't believe me. But I will try to bring up as many good points as possible, so it's not biased at all, and I'm sticking straight to the facts. I'm not gonna kind of go off on any sort of theoretical stuff. But as far as I've seen, a lot of people are trying to make other people believe that there should be a time skip now, and it's just really gotten to me. I probably will make a whole another video on time skips and stuff, and why I don't think they're very important. But a lot of people have just making videos and theories and comments about there needs to be another time skip or else nobody's gonna get stronger. And we haven't even been in the New World yet. We've literally just gotten here like 2 or 3 arcs ago. So I'm baffled by half the stuff that's going on. Also, people don't think that Luffy is ready for Kaido yet, and I will also make a discussion on that pretty soon. I'm gonna be doing discussions a lot more just to kind of, conversate with everybody and all that. But this one I feel is really important just because many people don't look at the facts for this topic, and they seem to ignore any other argument that comes across them. They just like to stick to their opinion, and they don't really try to open their mind at all. So let's just look at some of the main arguments people use for Doflamingo being stronger, and this is the majority of the people who talk about this topic. So the first main argument is that Doflamingo was injured by law and he wasn't at full strength. Alright, so he obviously wouldn't have been at full strength the entire fight if he took a major final attack like that. Another argument is that he was running the birdcage, which probably took up a lot of energy, and he underestimated Luffy. Now, I don't see this argument too often, but it kind of applies to every villain Luffy fights, because a lot of the villains he fights are just they just underestimate him. They're very cocky and egotistical, so they're probably going to underestimate him most of the time. Another point was that Luffy got the help of Gats, and technically Law too, and all the people in the Coliseum. Another argument is that Gear Force is limited on time, and that it is the only thing that makes him stronger. Yeah, this is kind of true, but I'll talk about that later. And the last one is that Doflamingo is just way too strong. He's on a whole other level, and that because he stood up to Fujitora, who is Admiral level, that he is automatically somewhere on the Admiral level spectrum. I'm not gonna really touch on that really because I personally don't know the levels yet. We don't really know how strong Admiral level is yet. It might not even be that strong. We don't know. It probably is pretty strong, but that'll be for a later video. So those are the main arguments I typically see in comment sections or videos addressing it. And I don't feel like people really analyze the fight properly. I feel like they just see one thing, Law attacks him and he gets damaged, and automatically, oh, Doflamingo's not at full strength, so therefore this fight, no matter what result it is, Doflamingo is stronger. And I just feel as if this is so biased. So I'm going to analyze the fight for you guys right here. I'm completely unbiased, and then I will give my personal points and take on it. Once again, unbiased. I'm just going to look at a few of my notes here of the fight analysis, just so I can give you the lowdown of what happened. For those of you who didn't really pay much attention, the minor details and all that, and the major details. Luffy initially got destroyed by Doflamingo, pretty much had no real attacks landed on him. Now this always happens in the first fight, so I don't know if I would take this point too seriously. And then the second part, Luffy got damaged by Bellamy. And before that, he had fought a bunch of Coliseum fighters in Dressrosa that had probably worn him down, and his fight with Chinjo. And then Law damages Doflamingo with several attacks and his strongest attack, which was Gamma Knife. And then we have Luffy lands hits on Doflamingo, which bounce off. This was sort of his when he started using his Gear Second and Gear Third on him. And these kind of just bounced off him. It didn't really do too much damage, but it was at least kind of fending him off, letting him stand his ground. And then we have Gear Fourth. Now this was after the Gamma Knife, and Gear Fourth pretty much treated him like a rag doll at first. And Doflamingo noticed this. He was like, "What's going on?" He was freaked out. But then Doflamingo realized that there must have been a time limit, because he realizes that this is borrowed power and that eventually his hockey's gonna wear out. So he begins to stall the fight, and he even said in the manga that he was gonna start stalling it because he realized that there was a time limit. And then Luffy, of course, runs out of time after Doflamingo awakens and starts using defense and all that with his strings. So once it does run out, he has to run around with Gats, and then as soon as he gets back up, he gets attacked by Doflamingo, getting punctured in many different areas by the hockey strings. And that's what leads to the final attacks. You got Luffy's final attack, King Kong Gun, versus the Doflamingo's Heavenly Strings, or Heavenly Ammunition. And this is where Luffy wins the fight. But many people say that Doflamingo was not at his 100%, so that this final attack does not really count because it was lacking, or maybe he has a better special attack that he couldn't use due to all the damage he took. But I'm just gonna address the points that I noticed, and a few of these could be debatable, so don't take them too seriously, but a lot of these are very solid and they are pretty good. The points I noticed were that Luffy was injured as well before the fight. Punk Hazard was the day before. He had fought Shinjao, and he let Bellamy get like a few free shots. And these weren't just like little shots. These were like full on, like, hockey punches to the stomach. This wasn't, just a few taps or whatever. So I would say that they were both damaged, but we don't really know how much both of them were damaged, because you could argue that Doflamingo was more damaged, but there is some solid evidence, and this is once again kind of debatable because it could have a lot to do with what he intended. But in chapter 783, Luffy says, "Over my dead body," when Doflamingo tries to attack Law. And Doflamingo says, "I'm already halfway there." Law was also insanely worn out, meaning that his attacks didn't do 100% since they are based on stamina. So obviously Law was not in good shape, and he even states that his attacks are based on stamina. So if he was extremely worn out, practically almost dead, and he used Gamma Knife, chances are Gamma Knife wouldn't have done its full effect. Also, Doflamingo stopped the damage from taking full effect, so whatever effect it did have, it was immediately stopped by his string healing, or not string healing, but string repair. So whatever, he took some damage at first, but then it just stopped because he had to repair it. And so it didn't work at its full potential. We could say that maybe it worked at like 25% of its full potential, probably even less, due to the fact that the whole purpose of it was to decay your organs, and that if he stopped it from decaying his organs, then it pretty much didn't have a huge effect, aside from what it initially had. He also seemed fine from it the whole fight. He didn't look like insanely injured except for a little bit of blood on his mouth, but I guess that's up for debate. Also, Gear 4 treated Doflamingo like a ragdoll. Even Doflamingo, when he first started hitting Luffy in his base form, he didn't even treat him like this bad. Like, he didn't throw him around all of Dressrosa through like just single hits. My next point, Doflamingo had stalled Luffy the whole fight, pretty much, with Gear 4th. He was using his awakening to like create barriers, pretty much running from him if you look at it. So I don't really think that it was that even. a lot of people like to say like, oh, it was pretty even, but Doflamingo didn't land even one solid hit when Luffy was in Gear 4th, and that one kick that he did, it just completely bounced off. It did no damage at all. Okay, so Luffy also shows that he can get around Doflamingo's awakened attacks. This is when he used Leo Bazooka. The Gats point, that's a pretty good point, because without Gats he probably could have died right there. But once again, Luffy was stalled the entire fight. I don't think that this was 100%. If Doflamingo was like a real warrior and didn't look down upon everyone, he probably would have been more offensive, and that would have given it a more fair outcome, because the 20-minute time limit Luffy had wouldn't have run out. And Doflamingo also might have had a time limit. We never considered that because we assumed it just would have lasted forever, but clearly it doesn't last forever, because otherwise he'd just be always awakened. So it's obviously going to have some kind of strain on him. I can't imagine that kind of power would just be free, like, hey, just use it whenever you want. So as for the damage comparison, as for the previous points I made, Luffy had taken a lot of damage. This Punk Hazard was the day before, so he already took a lot of damage from that. Took a lot of damage from the Coliseum against Chinjao. He had ran around all of Dressrosa, and he also took some pretty good hits from Bellamy and a few hits from Doflamingo's sort of surprise attack, I guess. And then, of course, after Gear 4th, he had gotten a ton of like lethal hits. I mean, if you look at how many, he was getting his organs punctured by Doflamingo's strings, so this was a pretty big deal. And this could have even done more damage than Law's Gamma Knife, if you think about it. And then Doflamingo, he had gotten Law's Gamma Knife, a few hits from Luffy, the Red Hawk. Red Hawk just sort of bounced off him, I guess. And, of course, a few other hits from Law, but nothing too big. And then he had gotten pretty much wrecked by Gear 4th. We don't really know how much damage Gear 4th did, because he didn't seem to like get that worn down by it. So, but we can assume it did a lot of damage to him. So I would say by the end of, by the point before they both used their final attacks, they were both extremely damaged from pre-fight and during fight. And you could say that this is around equal. Even if it was slightly tipped on either side, it was still around the same. So when they used their final attacks, they were both equally damaged, at least around equally damaged. And even then, Luffy's Kong Gun, or King Kong Gun, has completely annihilated Doflamingo's final attack. So even if Doflamingo was slightly more injured, there still would have been some resistance, but there was not really any resistance. It was just, the strings just completely just snapped. There was none. At least from what the manga showed. And there might be in the anime, it might get dragged out a little bit more, sort of like the Caesar thing. But overall, I would say that Luffy won pretty fairly. Like, you gotta consider the damage that was done on Luffy the entire fight, and the fact that Punk Hazard was the day before. Doflamingo, even though he took Gamma Knife, which was pretty strong, it was a pretty weak version of Gamma Knife, and he immediately stopped the damage from spreading. So it did some damage, but not the full amount. It did like a percentage of what the damage normally would have done. So if he had taken a full Gamma Knife, then it would have probably been a lot bigger of a deal. But also, even if all that is enough for you, this is a more theoretical side of it. This is a lot more based on my old theories, and that is that Gear 4th is only half of what Luffy learned, at least Bounce Man is. So a lot of you have probably seen my old theories about Gear 4's alternate versions and stuff, and the possibility of Gear 5th happening relatively soon. So I don't think that Luffy went all out against Doflamingo, even in the sense that he was already injured and was pretty much halfway dead, as Doflamingo described it. He wasn't even showing half of his full strength, or half of what he fully learned. So Luffy was really not showing everything here, and wasn't giving his entire strength. So that it could be said that Luffy could deal with Kaido. Now, at least. He could probably put up a pretty fair fight against Kaido right now. Also, Gear 4th has a 20+ minute time limit. A lot of people like to complain about the time limit, but it's 20 minutes. That's a pretty good amount of time. Of course, the Aokiji versus Akainu fight was like days, but I don't think there's going to be day-long fights in One Piece as far as what we see in the manga and anime. As far as Kaido goes, a lot of people like to make the point that we need another time skip, but I think he's pretty much ready, and he kind of has to win at this point. Like, if you think about it, he really can't lose again. Like, what's he gonna do? Walk over to Kaido and then lose, and then be like, oh, I gotta go train again. He said that he would never lose again. Now, he might get beaten the first fight, like round 1, because he got beaten by Doflamingo round 1, but that doesn't mean he loses in the sense that everyone dies and he can't protect anyone again. Because his version of losing is that he can't protect anyone, he dies or something like that. So as long as he doesn't let anyone die, or as long as he doesn't get completely beaten, he could always beat Kaido around 2 or 3. And I sort of explained this in my Gear 5th video, and I will elaborate more on it in another theory or discussion. But I think there will be a training period during the Kaido arc, maybe with Scopper, who could be an awakening master. And it might not be just to learn stuff, it might just be to put everything he learned during the time skip together. So, as for the proof of this, it was stated in the Gear 5th or Gear 4th flashback, where we saw Rayleigh, that Rayleigh still had stuff to show Luffy during the Gear 4th, during the time skip or whatever. So he still had stuff to teach him, and we know that Rayleigh left during the 3/4 point of the time skip. So if he still had stuff to teach him at this point, it was probably halfway into the time skip, and he already had Gear 4th. So this means that there was at least 50% more of the time he had to learn. So there's obviously stuff that we have not seen yet, and that wasn't shown against Doflamingo. So there's always a possibility that he has some huge trump card, like Gear 5th or Gear 4th other forms. I will of course put this up on the screen, the other videos I mentioned this in, so check those out if you want some more solid evidence. So just tell me what you guys think in the comments. I don't really care if you complain, because this is just a discussion, this is just to share our opinions. The facts are important, of course, but this of course could all be rounded up into interpretation, so don't take anything too seriously. I will have a theory and a discussion and hopefully a review up by next week. I will try to do 3 videos a week from now on, so look forward to that, and I will see you guys later.